Welcome to Wendy's channel. Enjoy listening. Anton had been putting all his energy and time into his career for several years. He worked as a manager in a large company where every day was scheduled down to the minute. Early rise, meetings, constant business trips. Deep down, he knew that such a lifestyle did not leave much time for his family, but he tried to convince himself that it was all for the sake of a better future for him and his wife. Marina, his wife, saw their life completely differently. At first, she was understanding of Anton's busy schedule, but with each passing month, she felt more and more lonely. She lacked attention and warmth, and each new evening spent alone seemed to distance her from her husband even further. She convinced herself that this was temporary, that Anton would soon achieve his goal and they would have more time for each other. But her feelings did not let her go. One day, while sitting in a cozy cafe, where she went after a long day at work, Marina met a charming and self-confident man. He introduced himself as Igor and talked about his successful business with ease and humor. And his manners and attention quickly captivated Marina. It suddenly seemed to her that she had met the very person she'd been looking for so long, caring, attentive, and successful. With Igor, everything developed easily and quickly. He knew how to create an atmosphere of carelessness and fun around himself, which was such a contrast to Marina's measured, predictable life with Anton. Meetings with Igor quickly became her outlet. It was as if she was discovering the world anew, enjoying his attention and unexpected gifts. They began to see each other more often after work. Igor always knew how to choose the perfect place for a date. He talked about his businesses, which he managed in several cities, and about the partners with whom he concluded large deals. Marina liked to imagine herself next to such a man, successful and relaxed, knowing exactly what he wanted from life. Anton, having returned from another business trip, noticed that Marina had become more secretive. She answered his questions about her plans for the evening evasively, and her phone was often on silent mode. He tried not to attach any importance to this, believing that perhaps the stress at work was affecting her. Anton decided that as soon as he finished the project, they would finally be able to spend more time together, and maybe even go on a trip that she had long dreamed of. Marina had already gotten used to Igor's evening calls and messages. He knew how to make her laugh even over the phone, and each conversation seemed to transport her to a world where there was no routine, only adventures and new discoveries. Once, when Anton went on a business trip again, Igor suggested that Marina spend the evening in one of the elite restaurants in the city center. Marina put on her best dress and tried to look perfect, all for him. Igor spent the entire evening telling how great deals literally lay in the palm of his hand. He mentions that he had recently gone to an important meeting abroad, and even talked about partners who, according to him, were ready to invest in a new project. Marina admired his drive, his dreams and determination, forgetting about everything. She felt like a part of a big world where every day brought something exciting. At the end of the evening, Igor took her hand, looked straight into her eyes, and said, "Can you imagine how important you are to me? If it weren't for work, I would want us to spend every moment together." These words touched her, and she realized that she missed him, even when they were apart for a short time. She saw in Igor someone special, who could give her the life she had always dreamed of, a life bright and full of amazing opportunities. A few weeks passed. Igor increasingly reminded Marina about his business and successful deals, fueling her interest. Every day she compared him more and more with Anton. Her husband really worked a lot, but his whole life seemed to her to be firmly tied to the office and accounting reports. Igor, as it seemed to her, lived a free and rich life. He was the one who knew how to take risks and enjoy life. One evening, Igor invited her to a new club where all the important people of the city had gathered. Marina was surprised. There really were representatives of the business community in the hall. People in expensive suits and with serious expressions on their faces. Igor showed her a luxurious hall, told her about his contacts and prospects, as if he had long been a part of this circle. That evening he looked especially confident and held himself with dignity, which finally won her over. They went up to the balcony of the club, where they could be alone. The balcony offered a stunning view of the night city. And Igor, hugging Marina, said, "Just imagine one day you and I will have all this. Together we will build our life, free and beautiful." These words touched her to the quick. She became increasingly convinced that next to Igor, she felt alive and desired. In the following days, Marina and Igor began to meet more and more often. Igor took her to elite restaurants where everyone knew him. He showed her buildings that he claimed he was planning to buy for a new project. Each of their dates increased her desire to be with this confident, charismatic man. Marina noticed how masterfully Igor warmed up her interest, leaving small mysteries about his life. She felt like a part of something big and significant, as if the world that Igor opened up to her was meant only for her. In comparison, her everyday life with Anton seemed increasingly monotonous and boring. Meanwhile, Anton, unaware of what was happening, continued to spend long hours at work. He dreamed of the vacation that he had long promised himself and Marina, and made every effort to complete the current project ahead of schedule. Sometimes he noticed that Marina had become a little absent-minded and thoughtful, but he attributed it to ordinary fatigue. One evening when Anton returned home a little later than usual, he noticed that Marina had hurriedly finished a phone call as soon as he entered. When he asked who she had spoken to, Marina replied that it was a friend who needed advice. Anton nodded and, not wanting to disturb her, went to take a shower. But that night, as he fell asleep, he could not shake off a slight feeling of anxiety. The next day, Igor invited Marina to a small business meeting. He said that he wanted to introduce her to his partners so that she could better understand his world. Marina, pleased that he was introducing her to his business life, happily agreed. They met at one of the luxurious restaurants in the city center. Igor was dressed in an expensive suit. He looked, as always, confident and attractive. He helped Marina out of the taxi and led her to the table where several people were already waiting for them. During the dinner, Igor introduced her and his partners, friends from the company where he worked as a driver, played out a scene as if they were discussing business projects and future deals with him. Marina was delighted, feeling like a part of a successful company and impressed by the communication with people who seemed so important. Meanwhile, Igor, skillfully keeping up the conversation, again emphasized his success while casually mentioning that he was currently busy with a complicated deal due to which his finances were temporarily limited. Marina, completely immersed in his stories, offered to help him, mentioning that she had savings. Igor, showing a semblance of modesty, initially refused, but a minute later admitted that the help would really come in handy if she didn't mind. Upon returning home, Marina felt important, involved in an important matter. She was sure that she had invested money in success and entrusted it to a person who would not let her down. A few weeks later, Anton returned late at night and noticed that Marina had become different. She seemed lively and was always in a hurry, often leaving earlier than usual. She was polite but distant, as if her thoughts were somewhere far away. Anton began to wonder what was going on. One evening, he tried to talk to Marina, asking how she was doing and why she had become so self-absorbed. Marina answered reservedly that everything was fine. She just had a lot of worries. She said that she wanted to change something in her life, to be useful. Anton, busy with work and confident that everything was under control, didn't ask unnecessary questions, deciding that she just needed space. At the same time, Igor supported her illusions about a new project. He told her how every day he was getting closer to a major deal that would change their future. Marina, feeling almost complicit in his success, lent him more and more money, justifying herself by saying that it was temporary, until his big deal was closed. However, the more she invested in it, the more often she caught herself thinking strange thoughts. Deep down, she was tormented by doubts about why Igor, so influential and successful, needed her help. But charmed by his attention and confidence, she continued to believe him, driving away disturbing thoughts. One evening, when Anton was on a business trip again, Igor invited Marina to dinner at an expensive restaurant. It was a special night for her. Igor talked about their future together, about how he would soon be able to close a big business deal and they could be together openly.
He assured her that Anton, immersed in work, would not even notice her absence. Marina, inspired by his words, felt that she had made up her mind. She told Igor that she was ready to leave Anton, even if it was difficult. He supported her, promising that she would not want for anything, because a new chapter of their life would soon begin. After dinner, Igor took Marina to his place, where he again played the role of a confident businessman in front of her. But at some point while he was away, she accidentally saw his documents left on the table. Among them, there was nothing that would confirm his stories about business, only a driver's license and a parking pass for some company. Suspicions still began to creep into her thoughts, but, afraid of being disappointed, she immediately drove them away, having justified that perhaps he was simply hiding the true extent of his work out of caution. Marina decided not to think about it anymore and to stick to her plan. Marina began to prepare for the decisive step. She began to gradually pack her things, trying not to arouse Anton's suspicions. Igor supported her, encouraging her with promises of a quick future together, and increasingly convincing Marina of the correctness of her choice. With each day spent in his company, she increasingly believed that she had finally met the man who would make her happy. Anton, unaware of Marina's plans, worked late, preparing for a major deal with a new partner. One night he called her, saying that he was delayed for a few days on a business trip. He asked her not to worry and promised that as soon as he returned, he would take a vacation to spend time with her. Marina answered him in an even voice, saying that everything was fine and wished him luck. End of the first part.